Daytona 500 is the Super Bowl of racing.
Real honor and a privilege to have been able to win.
If you don't win the Daytona 500, you hadn't had a good racing career.
I think as the years went on, it meant a lot more to me than what happened then, because I realized the seriousness of it and realized how damn lucky I was.
Sitting here, we're talking about the Daytona 500. I was fortunate enough to win it 7 times.
The crowd cheers as Richard Petty in his number 43 Plymouth takes the checkered flag going away.
Richard Petty wins the Daytona 500.
So it'll be Richard Petty, car number 43, 71 Plymouth, winning for the 3rd time here at Daytona.
When the Petty Blue flies under the checkered flag, winner of the 15th annual Daytona 500.
Here comes Richard Petty. Richard Petty has won the Daytona 500 for 1974.
There's a fight between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison. Petty has won it. You are watching an incredible moment in the history of motorsport. Here is a man winning the most difficult, the most prestigious stock car race there is. For the 7th time, Richard Petty has won it.
We came down here for the first 2 or 3 years, and we didn't really have that competitive in engines in our cars. But we always run good. We run 2nd or 3rd or 4th, you know what I mean? We looked at Daytona, and it was just another race. It wasn't the Daytona 500 as far as the Great American Race or whatever they call it now. But we just looked at it and said, look, this is the first race of the season. You know, if we can get off to a good start, you know, this is going to sort of dictate the rest of the year for you and the whole deal. And I don't know that we put anything extra into the car or thinking about it or what. We just had better luck, I guess, than a lot of people. Was in the right place at the right time.
Richard was 21 when he started driving, and really he didn't know nothing else.
You know, Richard Petty was one of the best race drivers that ever lived.
He did have good equipment.
I felt like if I could beat him, I could win the race.
He knew what he wanted in a race car, and if he got that, he knew it was in his hands, and he took care of business.
At the same time, you've got to look at my Uncle Maurice Petty. You got to look at Dale Inman. You got to look at Wade Thornburg, Doug Holder. You got to look at all those guys, Richie Bars, guys that have been there. They were a great team.
From the Daytona International Speedway, it's the 6th annual Daytona 500. The largest crowd ever to watch a sports event in the state of Florida has gathered here today to watch the world's fastest automobile race. This is truly the international center of racing in the world today. Fans have come from all over the 50 states, from Great Britain, from Japan, from Latin America. There are even 2 spectators here from Russia. Hello, everybody. This is Bill Fleming, welcoming you once again to the 6th annual Daytona 500-mile race here at Daytona, Florida. This could be one of the great stock car races of all time today if the qualifying speeds have anything to do with it. If you recall, a year ago we were here and the Fords finished 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Well, the Plymouths and the Dodges are out today to try to break that stranglehold that Ford had in 1963. And, well, they could do it because the first 7 fastest qualifying cars today are Chrysler products. The big question seems to be, will they have the durability to go 500 miles at these tremendous speeds? We've got a perfect day for racing. It's a little bit breezy here, but bright sunshine, and it should be cool, at least for the comfort of the drivers, and also should have an effect on the tire wear. However, to comment further on that, our racing experts, Chris Economaki, editor of the National Speed Sport News, and all-time great race driver Sterling Moss.
Down here in the pits before the start of the race, there's a lot of excitement. 46 cars on the line. It's going to be a tremendous event. The record for 500 miles is a little over 152 miles an hour. Estimates of the winning speed today range as high as 170 miles an hour, and the cars are all powerful. The Plymouths and Dodges have special engines, hemispherical combustion chamber jobs, putting out over 500 horsepower. The tire companies have made special tires for the left side of the car and special tires for the right side of the car. They're different. The pit crews have to pay attention. And the concentration the drivers have to undergo at these speeds is tremendous. It's going to be an interesting race, and to help make it more interesting is our colleague Sterling Moss, the former racing great. Sterling, where will you be today?
Well, I will be all over the place, getting in people's hairs, trying to find out exactly how they're going to get over these problems of fuel consumption and tire consumption, all these things. I think they've got a lot of things cut out, or at least their work cut out, to get over these problems, and I'm going to try and find out how they're going to do it.
That's it.
All right. right, here are some of the drivers who'll be out there today. One of the favorites, 26-year-old Richard Petty of Randleman, North Carolina, whose father, Lee, won this race in '59. He'll be the crew chief today. And earlier, we recorded these sessions with the crew chief to see what they thought of their driver.
I think Richard's a real good driver. In fact, he follows sort of in the suit what I have done before. And when he gets out on the track, he sort of uses his head. And I think it's the time to run this speed, he should be able to use his head because they run up to 170 to 75 miles an hour. And it's sort of up to him to be able to control his own speed and whatnot on the racetrack.
Also in a 64 Plymouth will be Paul Goldsmith, the top qualifier at 174.910 miles per hour. Here's what his crew chief, Ray Nichols, had to say about Paul.
What we like best about Paul is his ability to tell us what to do to the chassis to make the car better for him.
And Marvin Panch, who won this race in 1961. His crew chief today, Glenn Wood, he'll be driving a 64 Ford.
Well, we like Marvin because he pays good attention to the pit, and he's a real moneymaker. He's always there to finish. That's heretofore. I don't know what he'll do in this one, but we've always had real good luck with him.
Now look at some of the other favorites here today. Freddie Lorenzen, who will be in a Ford today, the top NASCAR money winner last year, car number 28. And here is Tiny Lund, who won this race a year ago. He'll be also in a 64 Ford here today. A.J. Foyt, former Indianapolis winner, three-time USAC national champion in a 64 Ford today. Dan Gurney won the Riverside 500 this year and fifth-ranking driver in the world. He is in the number 12 Ford today, set up by Glenn Wood. Dave McDonald in a Mercury, set up by Bill Stropp, car number 17. Dave's one of the top sports car drivers in the country today. There's the magic message to all the drivers. Start your engines, get in your cars, and here is Tiny Lund. He's already in the car. We have a microphone stationed right down close here, and let's see if we can hear the last-minute instructions from his pit crew to Tiny Lund.
You start them with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll watch the big sign. Yeah. It'll be a lap or two off. But there's a tube of Ford sticking out down here on top of that pit thing down there, you know. All right. Anybody in the pit's got any odd color clothes or anything? Help me fix them. No, but here's what. There's a tube of Ford sticking out about 4 feet right up there. Yeah, walk along. Tiny, good luck, boy. All right. Keep it straight now. Well, I head up. I'm going to try to get the draft in the beginning, but then I'm going to fall back because I think we turn too much in that fast draft. I ain't got the high gear, and everybody else comes in.
Well, there you hear Tiny Lund, and a little bit of inside strategy. Said he's going to try to get the draft first, but he didn't think he had the staying speed to go with some of the hotter cars. We'll see what happens. Here's our Goodyear blimp. Our cameras are in that blimp today, and we hope to give you a shot that'll cover the full 450 acres of this tremendous international speedway. And there you see the pace car is out. Paul Goldsmith on the pole, Richard Petty next to him, both in Plymouth. Junior Johnson of Rhonda, North Carolina in a Dodge. Bobby Isaac next to him in a Dodge in the second row. Then comes Buck Baker and Jimmy Pardue, both in Plymouth. They're in the third row. David Pearson is in the fourth row. Then comes the first Ford. That will be A.J. Foyt in 00. Fire Pants just went by in 21. Jimmy Pascal getting into position. Darrell Derringer in 16. Parnelli Jones in 15. Fireball Roberts there in 22. A beautiful sight here as they're coming down the home stretch. The pace car driven by Bill France is going to be pulling off now, I believe. He is, and the green flag is out. Here they come, and watch them roar down here. 46 of the fastest cars in the world. Here they come. It's a good start. Real good start as Goldsmith and Petty vie for the lead as they go down the straightaway and approach that first turn. And it is Goldsmith on the inside who has a slight lead. And you can see the paper is blowing around here. It's a tremendous vacuum. And wind gusts are set up by these cars. Great turbulence down on the track right now as they whiz by, going right up to full speed on this high bank tri-oval. There they go down the backstretch. It's Goldsmith in a red car, a Plymouth, followed by Richard Petty in the blue car, and in third place is Bobby Isaac, car number 26 in the 64 Dodge. Very close as they have gone away from the rest of the pack here. In fourth place, Buck Baker, then Jimmy Pardue, Davey Pearson, A.J. Foyt, and by for the first time, and they did it in a little bit over 50 52 seconds. Wow, that's about 173 miles an hour. Look at that paper fly. And it's still Goldsmith in the lead, Petty in second place, and car number 26, Bobby Isaac, is in third. The qualifying speed, the top qualifying speed, an all-time record, 174.910, and they're at least that on that first lap. Just almost unbelievable. Bucky Blackburn has already gone out of the race in a Plymouth. Doug Cooper's out, so we've had 2 cars go out already, and I imagine at this pace, many more are going to drop by the wayside before long. It's still Goldsmith, Petty, and Isaac. And here is Petty on the inside now, and he's going to take the lead. Car number 43, Richard Petty, has got the lead. And Goldsmith is back in second place, and Isaac is in third. So Richard Petty has taken over the lead there on the inside in that 64 Plymouth. We're in the middle of the 7th lap right now, and Richard Petty has the lead. And look at Bobby Isaac close up on him in that bright red 64 Dodge, and he's going to get him, I believe. Bobby Isaac has taken the lead from Richard Petty. Petty in car number 43, Isaac in number 26. Look at them battle it out. They've left many of the cars behind them. And here they come down in front of the home stands. It looks like Petty now has hooked on for a little bit of a draft. Could be that he's trying to slow up a little bit to save some fuel. He's had some great speed. Unofficially, we had him up around the 174 mark, and get this, the official time on lap number 6, a new all-time record, 175.095 miles an hour. Here's Lorenzen getting his draft. Let's get down to Sterling Moss now and get his impression. Sterling?
I see that Petty's now dropped back to get his 5 laps, I guess, a tow to save his gas. He told me that although he hasn't got a fuel gauge, as one knows it, he's got a pressure gauge, which as soon as he sees it flick, he must come in and stop and take off on gasoline. Now, in the other race that he was in, he lost it by literally inches. And I must say, at that time, I felt that he slightly misjudged because he had 20 seconds lead just before the end of the race, and then on the last lap he ran out of gas. Okay, Bill, thanks. Back to you.
All right, Sterling, I'm sure it's noisier down there than it is inside a race car. Now here's Wendell Scott coming into the pits, and here is Richard Petty going to take the lead again. Petty has retaken the lead from Bobby Isaacs, and look at Petty go in that light blue Plymouth. Great speeds that they have shown here in the first 10 laps. Petty in front, Isaac in second place. And this might deserve a good place to get a word with Richard Petty. A little bit earlier, Chris Economaki talked to this tall, lanky driver from Randall, North Carolina, who's only 26 years old, whose father is his crew chief. So let's go to that interview right now with Richard Petty.
Richard, you ran out of gas in your 100-mile qualifying race. What kind of strategy are you going to use today?
Well, I hope my strategy is a little bit different so I won't run out of gas, but the way I run the race, we'll probably use it out the same way today. We'll run just as hard as we can, and when we need something, we'll come in and get it.
How many pit stops do you foresee?
Well, the way I run Friday, I'll have to make 5, but if I can get drafts and everything, we might possibly make it on 4, but we'll probably have to make that last one just maybe 4 or 5 gallon gas.
All right, Wendell Scott back onto the track now. The car number 34, they had to click. Uh-oh, what's that? There's a spin right in front of us down here, and he's got it under control. It's car number 16, Darrell Derringer, who spun right in front of the grandstand in his 64 Mercury, and he's going to continue in the race. Going to go back out there. He got his car a little bit out of shape, apparently, and held on to it. Great sigh of relief goes up as he goes out, and there's another car slowing down. It is number 22, Fireball Roberts. Fireball Roberts slowing down in his 64 Ford in the backstretch. 2 more cars in the pits, Chris.
Plymouth Dodgers are having early race trouble here with 2 drivers who were given great chances of winning in the pits. Bobby Isaac in car 26 and his teammate, Paul Goldsmith, number 25, in the pits with trouble. Sterling Moss is down there. We'll wait for him to get back with a report.
Okay, Chris, more things really happening fast. Here's another car, blown engine, looks like. He's smoking. It's Bobby Johns, car number 7 in a Pontiac. And looks like he is going to be slowing down and coming in. You saw Fireball get out of his car, so he's out of it. And with Isaac in and Goldsmith in, car's overheating. All that paper and debris you see, certainly sucked into the radiators, is going to give him a lot of trouble, especially with these fantastic speeds. Keep our eye on Bobby Johns here. I don't even know that they're going to try to service this car or not. Smoking very badly, and that usually is a telltale sign. Here's Tiny Lund's car in. That's all for Bobby Johns, and Tiny Lund's car is there. Look at the paper they've taken off the grill work. He's having the same kind of problem. Tiny Lund, however, is back and going out onto the track. Things really happening every second here. You can't even take your eyes off this 2.5-mile oval. We imagine there's going to be plenty of activity down in that pit area, so stand by, folks. Looks like it's going to be a busy afternoon. Richard Petty going down that backstretch now, and still hasn't had a lap under 170 miles an hour. Here's Fred Lorenzen coming in. Car number 28, Freddie Lorenzen, NASCAR winner of last year, all-time money winner. Here goes Chris Economaki across the track there. Chris, as soon as you get your headset on, if you can get us an observation here. Chris?
Well, the problem here seems to be paper in the radiator. One of the first jobs the mechanic does here is get paper out of the radiator. The front of Freddie Lorenzen's car clogged with paper. And in addition to changing the inside tire, the mechanic is just about 1 if not laps down. Nelson Stacy on the hood. One of the pit men almost got carried away with the car. Driver Nelson Stacy assisting here in Lorenzen's pit. Okay.
All right, thank you, Chris. And here is our leader. This is Richard Petty, car number 43. And he's still got a real good lead. Let's go down to Sterling Moss now. Sterling, you have an
Thanks very much, Bill. I've just got back from the pits of the Plymouth and Dodges, and Goldsmith and Isaac and Pardew were all in with overheating trouble.
Richard Petty in the lead on this 38th lap. It comes the time now when most of these cars are going to have to start making pit stops. Paul Goldsmith in car number 25, right behind Petty, is really a lap behind him because Pearson, A.J. Foyt, Parnelli Jones, and Marv Pinch are in there for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And Goldsmith is actually running 6th, but as soon as they pit, of course, he could move back up into the lead. Now, Goldsmith had that quick pit stop. Don't know, really, whether he got fully serviced or not. Here's Petty slowing down, and his pit crew is getting ready for him. So that means that Dave Pearson now has taken over the lead. A.J. Foyt is in 2nd. Parnelli Jones is 3rd. Pinch is 4th. They have pit stops to make, and here comes Richard Petty, and Buck Baker's coming in, too. The sister car to this one. So let's go down to the pit area and Chris Economaki. Chris?
Buck Baker and Richard Petty, both have come in, apparently out of gas because of the slow speed which they approach their pits. A tough job for the Petty pit crew because 2 cars in at the same time. Richard's car is getting more attention than is Buck's car. Tires going on the outside of the Petty machine. Gas in, and this is frantic down here. The tires are being rolled around. Parnelli Jones is now in the pit. It looks as though this is the routine time for that row of first pit stops. Or rather, one of the Mercuries, not Parnelli Jones, one of the other Mercuries is in, and they're blowing the paper out from the radiator. The litter that's collected on the radiators is now an added job for the pitmen to perform to get these radiators clean. Baker goes out, running over one of his tires, and Richard goes back into the contest.
Okay, Chris, and here is Paul Goldsmith, who has a great opportunity now to get into the lead. As soon as Pearson and Foyt and Jones and Pinch come on in, so Goldsmith is running a real good spot here in that bright red 64 Plymouth. And here comes A.J. Foyt. A.J. Foyt is coming into the pit area, and let's go down to him. Chris?
A.J. Foyt comes in for a fueling stop. And without waiting to check, they jack the right side of the car up to change the tires there. 1 can of gas in, 2 cans of gas in. And Foyt's the calmest man on the car. Tire wear is being measured with needle-like gauges by the Goodyear technician to see whether or not it's time for a change. Now, they're getting more than 2 cans. His point must have been out of gas. These cans hold only 10 gallons, and they push 2 in, and they're chopping off a little bit with a third one. And they're sending him on his way.
Okay, AJ is back out there now, but Pearson, Tanch, and Jones have come on in, and they've been serviced during that pit stop. A lot of frantic activity, as Chris told you. And look at Richard Petty move there to the left of your picture, car number 43, really going now, trying to catch Paul Goldsmith in car number 25. He's about a half a lap behind him. Marvin Tanch in car number 21 there is a lap back. So Petty now has his work cut out for him, and the question will be, is Goldsmith going to be coming into the pit? That'll be the thing that everybody's going to be wondering about. Whether Goldsmith is going to have to come back into the pit area to get some gasoline and get some tires. Paul Goldsmith now races out of Mexico City, and one of the most knowledgeable drivers around. Chris Economaki talked to him earlier.
How about the wind?
The wind, I think a lot of it depends on your automobile. And this car that I'm driving, a 64 Plymouth, it just doesn't seem to affect it. I've run in 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I'm not too hampered by the wind.
Paul Goldsmith, pole starter today.
Okay, just during that time, Goldsmith came into the pit. Just during that time, we took out to go to that pre-recorded interview, and Richard Petty now has regained the lead. So Goldsmith will be going back out on the track. We're on the 53rd lap right now, and here's the leader, Richard Petty. The average speed for 50 laps, 168.539 miles per hour. And this tremendous pace has taken its toll of some of the name drivers and cars. Freddie Lorenzen in a 64 Ford is out with a transmission trouble. Bobby Marshman in a 64 Ford out with an overheated engine. Bobby Johns in a 64 Pontiac blew up. You saw that one happen, car number 7. And Fireball Roberts quit on the backstretch with transmission trouble in the 64 Ford. So right now, Richard Petty out in front. And, oh, there's trouble up in the front of the stretch right here. Our car has kissed the wall. It's car number 6, David Pearson, running in second place right now. It looked like the right front tire blew out. Parts of that tire scattered all over the track. And that car just hugged the wall. Thank heaven for that, because there was a lot of traffic behind him. Here we can see movement in the car. Pearson appears to be all right. He's going to be climbing out of there. Now the question is, how is he going to get off the track? Cars are still moving down. He's got about a 12-foot wall to get over. The yellow flag is out, and the pace cars moved out onto the track. Bill France sensing immediately now that they're going to have to get that car off the railing and get Pearson off to the infield. So they've slowed down considerably, and now they're pulling the car off the track, and there's lots of oil out there, so it's going to be some time before the green light goes on again.
Well, over here in the pit, the big question is, will number 43, will he be able to keep ahead without a draft and not have to stop one extra time for gas? Because the others are bunched up behind him, quite a long way behind him, it's true, but they're using each other's draft to keep going at a high speed. Will 43 Petty, will he be able to keep going and cut down one stop? Well, anyway, over to you, Bill.
All right, Sterling, and right now, Richard Petty is moving into a little bit of traffic. We're going to try to pick up a timing on him to see what kind of a pace he's setting here as he goes around this tri-oval at the Daytona International Speedway. Keep in mind that if he does it in 53 seconds flat, he'll be at 170 miles an hour average speed. This means that at times he can be doing in excess of 180. Incidentally, at the end of 90 laps, and we're on the 96th right now, the speed dropped down to 159 plus, but that was due primarily to 8 laps under the caution light due to Davy Pearson hitting the wall. Because earlier they've been running about 169 miles an hour and it dropped off, but it looks like he has picked it up considerably since that time. So here is Richard Petty coming around, and we'll head down the home stretch in front of the grandstands here before a tremendous crowd of more than 80,000 racing fans. Here he comes. 52.6, and that is calibrated to 171.102 miles per hour for Richard Petty in that 64 Plymouth, who right now is leading as we come very close to the halfway point. Remember, however, he's got to make a pit stop here before too much longer. He took one at 38, another one at 56 under the caution light. And now A.J. Foyt really moving. And Marvin Panch hooked right on there, drafting him. And there's Darrell Derringer coming up rather quickly after that rather disastrous spin earlier in the afternoon. So A.J. trying to pick up ground on Petty. And let's see if we can get an interval between these two cars right now to give you an accurate appraisal of just how far A.J. is behind. It looks like it's going to be at least 2 miles over this 2.5-mile track. You know, there's 4 solid hours of sports entertainment Saturday afternoons on most of these ABC stations. Challenge Golf leads off the lineup and is followed by the exciting Professional Bowlers Tour. Then ABC's Wide World of Sports completes the triple header with an hour and a half of the top athletic events from all over the world. And boy, this is one of the top ones right here, the 6th annual Daytona 500. Speed's unbelievable. As Richard Petty forcing many of the cars out with a blistering pace. There it is, 41 seconds A.J. has to make up. That's just a little bit over 2 miles. Now let's hear what A.J. had to say before the race. Chris Economaki interviewed him.
A.J., with the speeds going up and up here at Daytona, does your Indianapolis experience stand you in good stead?
Well, yes, Chris. All the experience I've had through stock cars, midget sprints, and everything add up to this here, and I think it helps you in the time.
How about this drafting technique? Is it more important today than it has in the past?
Well, yes, Chris, because we're having to draft. It seems like the Dodges and Plymouths are a little bit faster than we are, but the other day I was lucky enough to hook onto one and draft them, and that's what I intend to do today, is just try to draft all day long.
Okay, and here comes Richard Petty into the pits right now, so let's get on him right now because A.J.'s now in the lead. Chris?
Here's Richard Petty coming in. Car number 43, goggles down, and a big smile on his face as he rolls into the pits here for a routine pit stop, and a happy pit crew goes over there. They're checking that right side tires. The jack goes up. Tire technicians measure the tread wear with their measuring devices. And the work is going on. They're handing water into them on the stick. The number of men that can work in the pit is limited by the rules. Richard Petty leading this race by a wide margin. Waits while his car is worked on, and it seems a long wait for drivers in this particular situation in the race. There he goes, 31.5 seconds, and he's back on the road. Okay, Bill.
Okay, and A.J. took the lead, but he's going to be coming into the pit right now, so it was very short-lived, and he's coming into the pit area. A.J. Foyt in 00, that 64 Ford, so Petty will still retain the lead. Here he comes.
A.J. Foyt was doing a tremendous job out here today, drafting that Ford, which is a slower car in the qualifying trials. A.J. stops for Banjo Matthews' crew to go to work on his machine. Front and rear tires being changed on the right side. And A.J. talks to the mechanic. He gets the drink served by hand. As the seconds tick away, the pits, where the races are won and lost in many cases. Excellent work being done here today. His stop is going to run a bit longer than Richard Petty's stop. Banjo Matthews, the bespectacled chief mechanic and foreman driver, sends him on his way in less than 40 seconds.
Okay, it was about 6 seconds longer, however, than Petty's stop, so Petty has almost now 1 lap ahead of A.J. Foyt. Well, at this point in the race, with 90 laps to go, 19 cars have dropped out, and the latest was Parnelli Jones, who went out with a bent pushrod in his 64 Mercury. So there are 27 cars, 26 of them are chasing this light blue Plymouth, car number 43, Richard Petty. He is now 1 lap ahead of everybody else, and they're all back in the pack in a good battle going on for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Paul Goldsmith currently in 2nd, A.J. Foyt in 3rd, Pardue is in 4th, Panch in 5th, and Pascal in 6th. Oh, there's a car upside down in the backstretch. Apparently, Jarrett in 11, you can't see him in your picture, but here's Rutherford upside down. Jarrett in 11 is up the track from him. Apparently they tangled, and Rutherford, with sparks flying as the roof of that car went grinding down the track, got upside down. Fortunately, there's no fire there, and we're waiting now anxiously to see whether Rutherford's going to get out of that car. The crash wagon is over there. There he comes. He's all right. He crawls out, and there is Jarrett's car, and you can see that they tangled somewhere. It happened so quickly we couldn't see it. But all of a sudden, Johnny Rutherford in 01 was upside down. And now they're making some precautionary, putting some precautionary foam there. And the yellow flag is out, and Petty is going to come into the pit right now. He's going to come in under the caution flag.
Here's Richard Petty, car 43, the leader, getting a break with the yellow flag coming in for the pit stop. Takes his time now. This will be a great break for Petty. For rather than losing a lap, he'll get the work done, back on the track, and get back onto the tail end of the track, which will be stacked up behind the safety car. And as a consequence, he'll get a pit stop in and only lose perhaps 200 yards on his nearest competitor, which is Paul Goldsmith in car number 25. Coolness prevails in the pits here. They sort of feel that they haven't won in the Petty pit. Racing dad, who was a champion before him, back running the pit operation on this very fast 1964 Plymouth. And they send him away. That's it.
Okay, Chris, the yellow caution light's still out, clearing up that debris on the backstretch. And A.J. Foyt probably will take an opportunity. He's slowed way down. A.J. currently running in third place. Goldsmith is running in second. And A.J. is now coming into the pit area, Chris.
And A.J. Foyt, the third place driver, the 00 Ford, is in the pits now. And this time it's under the hood for some work. The addition of oil. These engines are really straining to maintain these close to 170-mile-an-hour speeds. Foyt calls to his pit crew. The roar of the engine here makes it very difficult to understand what he's asking for. He's an insistent driver. He's taking a drink. He hates to see those cars passing him on the straightaway. Indianapolis winner, three-time national open cockpit champion, A.J. Foyt of Houston, car 00, been up with the runners ever since the green flag fell today.
And right now, Richard Petty, with 41 laps to go, in a prime position. He's got one more pit stop to make. Standing by right now with Chris Economaki is Johnny Rutherford. Let's get the story on that accident.
This is Johnny Rutherford, who was involved in that spectacular backstretch flip. Johnny, what caused it?
Well, the way it appeared to me, Ned Jarrett and I were running together. And there's a situation that arises down here with the wind and the drafts, and Jarrett's car pulled the back end of mine around, and I started sliding, and I must have slid out in front of him, and then he hit me with the front of his car, and I started flipping.
How about when you got upside down? Was it a wild ride? Were you shaken up badly?
Not too badly. I'm starting to get a little stiff. It was a pretty rough ride. The main thing was getting the sparks from the top. It was sliding right upside down, and the sparks from the top was burning me just like welding without a shirt. And
how far along did you go upside down?
Oh, I would judge about 300, maybe 400 yards, Chris. It was quite a ride. I didn't know where I was or if I was going to get hit again or just exactly what was going on. I just hung on and covered up, and everything worked out pretty good.
And a ferocious battle still being waged for second place between Jimmy Pardue and car number 54, 64 Plymouth, and Paul Goldsmith, that red Plymouth on the outside. They've been battling each other for that number 2 spot. And, of course, they're still chasing Richard Petty in that Plymouth, who has first place pretty well wrapped up. That is, of course, if he makes a clean pit stop and nothing happens to him during the last 30 laps of this race. Here is Richard Petty coming in, so let's watch this one. Chris?
We're standing by in the Petty pit, waiting for this final fuel stop for Richard Petty in car number 43. And here he is, coming in, as the mechanics really rush to meet the car. Gasoline, motor, going, let's try and see what he's saying. Stealing Richard Petty's words as he waits for the work. Face is clean. He looks very calm. In fact, the inside of the car is absolutely immaculate. Tremendous noise down here as he revs the engine high. In fact, this new Plymouth still has the warranty sticker on the rear quarter window. And there he goes. Richard Petty on his way to what looks like an impressive record-breaking victory in the Daytona 500.
And now we're coming to the windup of a very exciting afternoon here at Daytona with Paul Goldsmith trying desperately to hang on to that second place and Jimmy Pardue chasing him. And Richard Petty has a lap on both of those cars. So all he'd have to do is just keep it running, and he'd be in good shape. And look at Pardue make his move now, moving up, and it looks like he's going to take Goldsmith. Jimmy Pardue moving into second place. Goldsmith dropping way back, and it could be that Goldsmith is going to come in. We'll take a check down here in this pit area. Goldsmith's crew getting ready, and it could be he's going to stop. So, Chris, if you're there, we'll tip you off that the Goldsmith may be coming in. Here he comes. And so Pardue has moved into second. Chris?
Paul Goldsmith in car 25, the second place Plymouth, has to give up that number 2 spot to make a pit stop here in the latter stages of this 500-mile race. The tires have been smoking as they come in the pits. The right rear wheel is locking up. That shows how these cars are jacked with a wake to the left. It looks like it's strictly for gasoline. And there's the word, sending him on his way. A very fast pit stop.
Richard Petty, a little bit over a lap to go now in that 64 Plymouth. The white flag will be out for him. He'll have 2.5 miles to go once he gets it. As he comes by everybody standing now, what a great race he's had here today. And the white flag is given to him as the battle goes on for second place. Jimmy Pardue in a Plymouth and Paul Goldsmith in a Plymouth. But officially, Goldsmith is 1 lap behind Pardue. Frankly, I don't think Goldsmith knows it because he's been battling him right bumper to bumper practically for the last 5 or 6 laps. But Pardue has 1 lap on Goldsmith. And all the attention now on Petty as he streaks down the backstretch. From Randleman, North Carolina, he's married, he has 2 children, another one on the way. He's been racing since 1958, but he's never won a big one. And he isn't far from doing it today. He was second in point standings last year, a very consistent driver, but that big one has always eluded him. Now all of his pit crew is out, and here he comes. The checkered flag is out and ready for Richard Petty. The last lap he turned was 170 miles an hour, so he hasn't slacked off a bit, and there's the checkered flag for Richard Petty, the winner of the 6th annual Daytona 500. I'd like to thank William H.G. French, the president of the Daytona International Speedway, and Bill French Jr. for all their help. Also, all of the officials of NASCAR for all the help they've been to us in a perfectly run race. Nobody could agree with that statement more than Richard Petty right now. For him, it was a perfect race. Down there in that wild melee of victory lane, everybody will be moving over. Chris Economaki is moving toward the area, and we'll try to get a word with the new champion. A happy guy he must be, too, and very glad to get that crash helmet off. Look at the crowd moving toward him now. The new champion. Let's go down to Chris.
Here's the winner, Richard Petty of Randleman, North Carolina. Richard, how long have you been in this racing business?
Oh, about 5 years now.
This your biggest victory?
This is it. This is the first time I ever won on a major speedway.
Now, your father was a champion before you. How much longer are you going to be in this business?
Well, I guess from now on, just like he is.
You've got $30,000 coming to you. Do you have any idea of how it's going to be spent?
Well, it'll go for some more cars, I imagine. Being they run that good, we ought to get a couple more.
How about the race, Richard? Did you have any problems with any other drivers, any that you thought might beat you?
Well, right the first of the race, I was worried particularly about Goldsmith. Then Isaac come up there, and they had a little bit of trouble, and then it was particularly all over with.
You made 6 pit stops. Why so many?
We made 3 or 4 under caution flags in order to keep them having to stop under the green, and it worked out that way. We didn't lose a lap when we stopped.
Richard Petty, winner of the Daytona 500 and a thinking driver.
Well, no one driver has ever won the Daytona 500 twice in a row, but the Pettys have come just about as close to that as they could do it. The father, Lee Petty, won the first Daytona 500 in '59, and his son came back, Richard, today, and won it 5 years later. So that's pretty much the story of a very exciting day here at the Daytona 500.
A race does not start with a green flag, as Lee Petty can tell us.
What happened?
happened during the race happened a long time before the race, meaning by the preparation of the race.
Lee Petty, 3 times NASCAR national champion, has retired from driving, not racing. He's crew chief for his son, Richard, who has taken over the wheel.
I don't feel like now that I've got to prove to anybody, not special to myself, that I was a pretty good driver back then, and then have somebody in your own family come along is good. Or, in fact, I classify them a lot better driver than I ever was, although it was just as stiff back then as it is today, but they've got so much better equipment, and to be able to beat everybody is quite an accomplishment.
How do you know you're ready for the race, Mr. Petty?
Well, I think you get ready for the race. I think you turn all the bolts and the nuts and tighten it up and get it prepared as good as you know how. You begin to go back on the old saying, you hope everything's okay.
Hello, everybody, from Daytona Beach, Florida. The event, the Daytona 500, the World Series of stock car racing. This event is only 8 years old, but as you can see in back of me at part of the packed stands, this event has grown so much in popularity and stature that today the largest sports crowd in the history of the South, 90,000, may be here to watch the world's fastest cars and top drivers. This is my first trip to Daytona, and I've been amazed at the magnitude of this event and the feeling of anticipation and excitement. Look at the thousands of cars in the infield. These people have come from all over to be here. And last night they even came in and set up tents, and their campers stayed the night over and were up early this morning and taking a tour, a part of this city in itself. Because here they have permanent buildings for garages, for the manufacturers and accessories. They even have their own hospital here and cafeteria, and thousands of dollars of electronic equipment for timing and photographing. And to give you some idea of the size of this racing complex, I do a lot of football on TV. I know you watch a lot of football. You can lay 17 football fields lengthwise across the infield, and the width 9 football fields. That shows you how big the Daytona International Speedway is. Now, working with me here today, one of the great drivers of all time, Roger Ward, 2-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, who also has driven here in Daytona. Now, Roger, what can we look for here today in this big event?
Well, certainly a very exciting race, because this is the most important race that these men will drive all year. The most money is here, over $142,000 in prize money. The winner will receive over $30,000 plus many endorsements. So they all want to win. The weather is a little bit shaky. We have a threat of rain in the air, and of course the wind is blowing quite hard. So this is going to make the driving very tricky. The cars run very close together. It's important to draft, and when you're running that close, this wind could be a very serious factor.
Also working with us today is a man synonymous with auto racing on ABC's Wide World of Sports. The publisher-editor of the National Speed Sport News, the very knowledgeable Chris Economaki, will be with us working from the pits, and let's go down to Chris right now.
Thanks, Kurt. Well, the most significant aspect of today's 500-mile race is the return of the Chrysler Corporation cars to competition after a one-year layoff because their Hemi-head engines were banned. The speeds have gone up, the interest has gone up, the field is bigger. And we have an important man driving the Plymouth Pace car for the 500 today, the Vice President of the Chrysler Corporation and General Manager of the Chrysler Plymouth Division, Mr. Bob Anderson. Bob, welcome to Daytona.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Bob, how important is stock car racing to a big automobile company?
Well, I think the answer to that's evident here today, Chris. If you see this tremendous crowd of rabid race fans who are here for just one thing, see how these cars perform. We've found in the past that our cars are here whether we're interested or not. So our aim at Chrysler is to make sure that our cars perform up to their full capabilities.
To help you out, must you win, or is playing the game helpful?
Well, it's always nice to win, but we think it's important to be here and to put on a good show.
We'll be watching.
Now we have Petty, number 43, is in the pole position on the inside. Dick Hutcherson in the Ford, number 29. Behind them, Goldsmith in a Plymouth. He'll be number 99. Earl Balmer in a Dodge 65, number 3. They're the first 4 cars. They've earned their right there. They're coming around turn 4 now into the home stretch, and there's the pace car going off the track, and it looks like we're going to have a start for the Daytona 500. They're approaching the starting line. 50 cars. The green flag. official start.
Well, there's a car awfully close to the wall going into the first turn. A lot of heavy traffic right now.
500 long miles to go. Roger, what's the strategy here in the early laps?
Well, of course, most of these drivers will be hoping that their car performs well. Still kind of an unknown thing. They'll be kind of anticipating that first pit stop. If they're going to have trouble, probably it will happen before then.
Richard Petty of Randleman, North Carolina, the favorite in this race, is out in front here in the first lap.
That's Paul Goldsmith that is pulled right in behind him, with Hutchison now in third spot and other cars further back.
Now you're going to hear the term drafting throughout this race, and we're going to take a look at it as these drivers draft, and here's one right now, and Roger Ward will explain it to you.
Well, actually, drafting is when one automobile follows the other very closely. And this is extremely important at these high speeds because two cars together can run considerably faster than one car by itself. It seems as though the horsepower of the second car helps push the first car through the air.
There's a vacuum formed here, Roger?
Yes, the second car is actually in a vacuum. And because that vacuum is helped broke up by the second car, why the two cars will go faster.
Richard Petty in the lead. Paul Goldsmith is second. Early laps here at the Daytona 500. 31-degree bank turns. The world's fastest tracks. They'll be hitting 180, 185 on these straights, won't they?
Yes, they will, and actually they'll be running through the turns at 165 miles an hour.
There's our first blown engine. That was H.B. Bailey of Houston, Texas. Here's the third and fourth car, Jim Hurtubise and Dick Hutchison running fourth.
I would imagine Hurtubise would like to get up there with Goldsmith and Petty so as not to lose out.
Now already they're lapping. There's Petty, number 43, and Goldsmith, number 99. At tremendous speeds are already lapping some of these cars. Look at them. The laggards are almost standing still compared to the tremendous speeds here of the number 1 and 2 cars.
Those cars that you think are standing still are still running around 150 miles an hour. Here goes Goldsmith on the inside. He's gotten a little edge on Petty.
What's the strategy in passing cars, Roger?
Well, of course, they use what they call a slingshot down here. The car gets back a few car lengths in the draft, and then because he's in that draft, he can run a little faster. If he gets his speed up, then gets alongside the other automobile, that slingshot effect should shoot him all the way by.
Is it the car or the driver that pays off?
Well, certainly both are very important. I think the best car makes you the best driver, but having ability is certainly important.
Here's another blown engine. That's Ronnie Chumley of Houston, Texas. Well, this year the speeds are higher than ever here at Daytona. We asked some of the drivers if this increased speed could make this race more dangerous.
The way I feel about it, it will, because the faster you run, the hairier the car gets and the more the draft affects it, Chris. But we've got a bunch of real good drivers here. They've all run here before, and I believe it'll be a real safe race.
Well, I would think so, definitely, Chris. I mean, as far as speed concerned, the faster you go, the more danger you would have as far as handling problems. But it seems like that most of the drivers and mechanics are, each year as they go along, do get better and better.
Well, I wouldn't really say a lot more dangerous. The tire companies have gone way out through the winter to make a wider, safer tire with a new safety diaphragm inside. The tire's about 1.5 inches wider for better oil holding purposes, but aerodynamically the cars are moving around just a little bit more this year.
Well, no, I don't think that a couple of 3 mile an hour will make it any more dangerous because they've improved the tires that much. In other words, the majority of the speed that we're getting this year, I'd say, come from the tires. So that makes us that much safer all the way around.
Definitely. In the 100 milers Friday, it was real tricky because everybody run about 2 mile an hour faster drafting than we ever have here. So it is definitely going to cause a lot of problems.
Well, no, I don't think it'd be any more dangerous because your tire factories have come up with better tires, and also the manufacturer of the cars have improved the new model cars quite a bit where they handle a lot better. So anytime the cars handle better, the cars are safer even though the speeds are up.
Goldsmith still leading, number 99. That's Richard Petty now taking the lead back. Richard Petty, number 43, driving his Plymouth, is in the lead here. Early laps of the Daytona 500, the World Series.
of stock car racing. The weather's a factor here today. It's windy. There's a threat of rain. What's the wind mean to the drivers, Roger?
Well, actually, the wind can affect these drivers quite a bit, and it would affect perhaps the car drafting more than the lead car because he's in that vacuum. And it's very tricky, particularly as you go through the turns and the direction of the wind hitting the automobile changes.
Petty moving right along. His Plymouth was banned here with a Hemi head engines last year. Here's our first pit stop, and this is quite a driver. Ned Jarrett, 34 years old, from Camden, South Carolina. He's one of 5 drivers who won the NASCAR national title. This is not an ordinary driver here in the first unscheduled pit stop.
Well, he certainly is an ordinary driver, and this is unscheduled. It's a little too quick. Looks as though he's probably got a tire problem.
Here in the early stages of the Daytona 500, number 43, Richard Petty out in front. That's Paul Goldsmith driving a 65 Plymouth. He's second. The 2 Plymouths are the leaders right now. And it looks like they're drafting.
Yes, they are. Actually, you can see how that drafting works because if you notice, Goldsmith will drop back just a little bit in the turns, but actually when they get to the straightaways, he can pull right back up on the leader.
Here are the 3rd and 4th cars. Jim Hurtubise is 3rd, and Dick Hutcherson is 4th. And now we have a change in leadership, Roger.
Yes, we are. Actually, Goldsmith is getting by Petty again, and it's important to lead the race because there's a lot of prize money, a lot of lap prize money, and these men want that money.
Paul Goldsmith from Munster, Indiana is in the lead. He's one of the most versatile drivers in the business. He likes speed, flying, and water skiing are his hobbies when he's not driving racing cars. Here's a blown engine. This is Earl Ballmer.
Yes, and of course he showed a little good sportsmanship. He tried to move up out of the way of the other drivers, and that's important because with the flying parts and the oil, it could be very dangerous.
Now, this is tricky getting in here, isn't it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, because there's so much traffic, it doesn't look as though he's going to be able to make the pits. He'll have to make another lap around the track.
Earl Ballmer. There's the Plymouth of Richard Petty, number 43, for a pit stop.
Yeah, they're changing the tires on the right side. Got a really competent pit crew. Looks like they're holding him. They're going to change the tires on the left side.
It's very unusual here, isn't it, this early?
Yes, it is. Actually, they must have some kind of a tire problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't be changing the inside tires this early in the race.
Well, of course, this race can be won or lost by the number of pit stops that a driver makes. Now, here are some of the top drivers in the Daytona 500 with their idea of the number of stops that will be necessary.
I plan on 4 stops. I think 4 stops could win the race.
If we run pretty hard, it'll take at least 5 pit stops, and there's hardly any way at all, I'd say, to get out of not running any under 5 pit stops, because we'll be lucky to run 100 miles on a tank of gas, so that'll automatically make 5 pit stops.
Well, I'm sure that we'll have to make 6 pit stops. Of course, caution flags could have a big bearing on the number of pit stops that we would make, but supposing we run the race under the green all the way, I think we'll have to make 6.
Well, we'll have to make 6 pit stops because we can't run between 80 and 85 miles on a tank of gas.
And there goes Richard Petty out of the pits. How long did it take him to accelerate to full speed again, Roger Ward?
Well, actually, it'll take him clear to the end of the back straightaway before he's up to his top speed. And even then, and if he doesn't have a little help, it won't be there.
Here's Darrell Derringer coming in for an unscheduled pit stop. I wonder what's the matter with him.
Well, I would imagine the same thing wrong with everybody else. They must be having some tire problems. Maybe they're chunking a little bit.
There's Earl Ballmer limping in. He's the man you saw blow the engine, and he's just barely getting in. Here's our leader. This is Paul Goldsmith, who's been a national champion motorcycle driver. 6 times he's driven in the Indianapolis 500. Right now he's sailing along out in front. He's been a swimming instructor, by the way, in the United States Merchant Marine. He's lapping cars. Paul Goldsmith, driving a 65 Plymouth, is in the lead here in the Daytona 500.
Actually, he has a very comfortable lead, too, because with Richard Petty in the pits for almost 2 laps, he's got a pretty good lead.
There is Dick Hutcherson. Let's go down to the pits to Dick Hutcherson's wife, Betty, with Chris Economaki.
This is Betty Hutcherson, wife of driver Dick Hutcherson and the mother of 3. Betty, does it worry you when Dick's out there racing?
Yes, it does.
Doesn't show.
Well, I'm nervous.
What do you think about when he's on the track?
Just hope he comes in safe.
How about all the strenuous business of auto racing, going from town to town? Does it wear on you?
I don't go too much. I go as much as I can. It wears him out more than it does me.
Would you rather be home when he's racing, or would you rather be here watching?
I'd rather be here at a major race.
Do you enjoy it?
No, I don't enjoy it.
Suppose his car goes out with mechanical trouble.
Then I calm down and I enjoy the race.
Well, we certainly hope that you don't enjoy today's race.
I do too.
Betty Hutcherson watching her husband drive in the Daytona 500.
There's the husband, Dick Hutcherson, one of the top dirt track drivers in the country. Also a 2-time champ of the International Motor Contest Association. Here's the leader, Paul Goldsmith. Paul Goldsmith of Munster, Indiana, is the leader right now in the Daytona 500. He's passing a great young driver, Mario Andrade from Italy, born in Italy, who I guess is going to be a real comer.
He certainly is.
We'll be back with more action from the Daytona 500 after this message. 39-year-old Paul Goldsmith is out in the lead. He's driving that number 99 car, 65 Plymouth, here in the Daytona 500 from the Daytona International Speedway, Daytona Beach, Florida. He had the fastest lap in the trials, 178 miles an hour. Here's A.J. Foyt now into the pits. This is quite an all-around driver, isn't he, Roger?
Yes, he certainly is. He's one of the greatest drivers of all time, and he proves it every time he goes to the racetrack. But he's been having trouble with his automobile, and he's not too happy right now.
Foyt drives everything, doesn't he? Midget sports. Uh-oh, here's a spin. That's Mario Andretti, the young 25-year-old driver. There goes the leader, Goldsmith, into the pit after Andretti is spun. So we'll have a new leader. That's Paul Goldsmith now for a scheduled pit stop. We're approaching the time now when we're having our first scheduled pit stop. What do they figure, about 100 miles per pit stop?
Actually, we're just short of 100 miles, and an interesting note would be that the average speed at this time is over 170 miles an hour.
And now a new leader. This is Dick Hutcherson.
Yes, Dick's been driving a really fine race. He was never worse than 4th, and he's driven a very consistent race and now has inherited the lead.
He had the fastest Ford in trials, 174 miles an hour. Look at these tires.
Yes, this is, I think, probably what's been happening. The tires, because of the width and because of the tremendous speed and heat, have begun to chunk a little bit, and you can see big pieces of rubber out of the middle of that tire, and that's what caused the problem in the early pit stops.
Those big tires in that tread, they really grab hold of that track, don't they, Roger?
Yes, they certainly will.
Here's the leader now, Hutcherson coming into the pits. Dick Hutcherson. He's 34 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina. You saw his wife earlier being interviewed. There's his pit crew going to work.
Here comes Mario Andretti's car, and as you can see, the front end has been quite badly damaged. I think he ran into another automobile, probably due to the wind or something, and has caused his problem.
Got a flat right tire. Now he's starting to boil over.
Yeah, I'm sure that he's out of the race for good.
That's a Chevelle, the only Chevelle in the race, right?
Yes, and it was running quite well.
Now we have a new leader and a local boy here, Marvin Panch from Daytona, Florida. He's a veteran. He a few years ago was in a bad accident and was severely burned. He's the leader right now.
Yes, that accident was right here at Daytona Beach. It was in a sports car race. The car got upside down and trapped him inside, and he was quite severely burned. But the driver who helped him get out, Tiny Lund, took over his stock car that year and was fortunate enough to win the race.
They're still working on Andretti's car. This is a boy that was born in Italy, 25 years old. He drives against Roger Ward in Indianapolis. And now moving in is Freddie Lorenzo. He's a favorite of yours, isn't he?
Yes, Freddie's one of my favorite race drivers and a truly great race driver. However, today, I think he must be having a little trouble, maybe too high a gear, because he's not keeping up with the leaders, and I'm certain he's not too happy with the way things are going.
These pit crews practice as a unit to get these times down?
Yes, they do, and as you'll notice, these boys really know what they're doing. Those tires that they're handling will be somewhere around 250, 300 degrees.
That number 22 is Bunky Blackburn, and he's got a blown engine now. Bunky Blackburn. He'll be out of the race.
That's a 1965 Chevrolet.
Look, there's something wrong here. This windshield is broken. This is Dick Hutchison. Let's go down to Chris Economaki and see what's happened.
Dick, you're the first of the leading contenders out of the race. What was the reason?
I hate to say it because it's a little thing like a windshield. A piece of tire come off of Hurtubise' car and broke my windshield, and it just started coming out, and there wasn't nothing I could do about it.
Oh, it's a tough break. How's the track and the race in general?
It was good as long as I was in there. I think the Ford was really running today, and I know we'd have been right up in front if we'd got to finish the race.
Well, you got one consolation. Your wife will enjoy the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Dick Hutchison, out of the race.
Now the leader is going in, Marvin Panch. Now, Roger, you not only have to have a great car and be a good driver, you have to be lucky in these races, don't you?
Yes, you certainly do. And, of course, Marvin Panch is lucky because he's got one of the greatest crews, the Wood brothers, in racing, and they'll do a really tremendous job. Looks as though they don't feel a tire change is necessary on his automobile, just fuel and cleaning the windshield.
Uh-oh, this is Bobby Isaacs. Looks like he's out of gas. The Daytona 500 roars on. Here's our leader, Cale Yarborough of Timmonsville, South Carolina, 26 years old. He's a young driver, Roger Ward.
Yes, he is a young driver, but he's certainly got a great future because he's one of the great young drivers.
He's driving a 66 Ford. Incidentally, he started the racing bug at the age of 10 in the Soapbox Derby.
Well, you never know where you're going to find him.
Ran his first Grand National at the age of 17. He's an old-timer at the age of 26. Here's A.J. Foyt's car. It looks like he's out of the race.
Yes, I think finally the trouble's got the best of him. They're pushing the car off the racetrack, so he's definitely out.
Here's the second-place car, Jim Hurtubise, driving a Plymouth. Jim Hurtubise of North Tonawanda, New York, is second. And there's Marvin Panch of Daytona. He's driving a Ford. He's third. And here's the number 4 man, Dave Pearson, with a Dodge Charger.
Dave's been driving a very good race, but here's Paul Goldsmith, who has been running in 5th position, passing Dave Pearson for 4th.
Paul Goldsmith moving right back into contention.
Well, Paul's had to make an extra pit stop, but at the speed he's running, he'll be back up there before too long.
Here's the 6th car now, Richard Petty, the favorite in this race. Right now, he's running 6th. He's made a couple of extra pit stops. That's why he's back.
Yes, this car in the pits right now is a young Indianapolis race driver with a lot of talent. His name is Gordon Johncock, and he's been driving a very consistent race, not too far up, but if he keeps running at this speed, he'll be up there before it's over.
Changing that left tire, isn't he, Roger?
Yes, they're changing the inside tires, which is unusual. And here you can see the amount of rubber that's out of that tire, and a piece like that is what could have put the windshield out of Dick Hutchison's car.
Look at him go on those bank turns, 31 degrees. Goldsmith now is charging for 3rd. And he's coming strong. Look at him weave. He is now taking 3rd here in the Daytona 500. He has passed Marvin Panch.
Looks to me like Paul Goldsmith's car is probably the fastest car on the track. He is handling beautifully because he goes inside, outside, wherever he wants to. So he's driving a really great race, and of course, his car is really performing too.
Now let's keep repeating, Roger. He ran the fastest lap in trials, 178 miles an hour.
That's really flying around any racetrack.
Right now, they're averaging over 170 miles an hour, the leaders here in this Daytona 500. What about physical? Here comes the leader, Yarborough, into the pit now. A scheduled stop. Cale Yarborough.
Cale's 2nd stop, and it's a planned stop. He's running the kind of race he'd like to run. However, I think probably he wishes he could go just a little bit faster.
How important is physical condition for these drivers?
Well, physical fitness is extremely important. It's it's a tough grind out there. It's more of a mental grind than physical. But if you had to worry about being in good shape, certainly it would be even tougher.
What kind of miles per gallon are they getting?
Well, these cars are getting on an average of 4 to 4.5 miles per gallon, and as you saw, Goldsmith is back in the pits, and looks like Freddie almost run into him trying to get to his pits.
That's Freddie Lorenzen.
And this is Freddie's second scheduled stop. He's not running as fast as he'd like to, but he's got a well-planned race, and with a little luck, he could be up in front.
There's a new leader, Jimmy Hurtubise, on this 2.5-mile track. Earlier, we asked some of the drivers what was the toughest place on the course for them. And here's what they had to say.
Well, there's no certain corner that's really tough. A lot has to do with it as cars you're running with and how the wind changes and which direction it's blowing. And if we get a crosswind, it doesn't hurt us too bad. But if we get a wind blowing with us and carrying us down the straightaway faster, it really gives us a lot of problems getting into the corner.
There's only one difficult spot on this course that bothers anyone to speak of. It'd be coming off the fourth turn. There is a little hump there, and you have to manage to come off the fourth corner right when you hit the hump. But outside of that, this is a real nice, clean track, and it's a pleasure to drive it.
Right down through this dog leg here in front, Chris, the car gets a little bit hairy there, especially if somebody passes you on the outside.
Well, I believe coming off of the fourth turn, when the bank levels out to get on the straightaway there's a pretty big jolt to the car as you come off there, and sometimes it will change positions with you.
Well, not anything particularly. The toughest part of the track, I'd say, probably would be coming off of number 4 corner. There's a real big dip, and if you don't come across it just exactly right, it can get you in a lot of trouble. But other than that, the track's pretty decent.
Well, I'd say the toughest part is this diamond on the front stretch. If you have the wind with you, running right a little over 180 down this front stretch, and the cars get a little light.
The leader is in now. This is Jim Hurtubise of North Tonawanda, New York.
This is his third pit stop, and actually it's a little bit early, so looks as though he may be having some tire problems also.
Well, they seem to be having more tire problems than they thought they would.
Yes, I believe they are, actually. Some of these fellows probably using a little softer compound, and as a result are running into problems. That softer compound gives them a higher rate of speed.
Blowouts are practically not. There's Jim Hurtubise, who was badly burned back in Milwaukee in '64. Look at the gloves he wears.
Actually, he has to wear those gloves to protect his hands because his hands were very, very severely burned.
Here's the leader now as we're past the halfway mark. Paul Goldsmith of Munster, Indiana, driving a Plymouth. Goldsmith, the leader. 90,000 looking on here. Here's the second place man, Richard Petty of North Carolina, and he's driving a 1966 Plymouth.
Actually, these two men have been going at a truly remarkable speed because even though they've made extra pit stops, they've managed to get back into first and second place.
Number 3 man, Marvin Panch of Daytona Beach, Florida.
If he keeps going at this speed, he's in there for a good spot. However, I doubt, unless Goldsmith has trouble or Petty has trouble, that he could win the race.
And the number 4 man is Cale Yarbrough of Timmonsville, South Carolina. Let's take a look now at the leaders.
Your leader right at the moment, even though it doesn't look like it, is Richard Petty, because Paul Goldsmith has been back in the pits for a couple of laps and has dropped back to about 5th or 6th.
Richard Petty, a farm boy from Level Cross, North Carolina, where he's born, has, driving his Plymouth number 43 in the last 7 years, has won more than $250,000. This racing is really booming in America. And these fans here, of course, are identifying with the cars and the drivers. Here's the number 2 car. This is Cale Yarbrough, just 26 years old, from Timmonsville, South Carolina. He was a semi-pro fullback. Most of these drivers are good athletes. Cale Yarbrough running second. And these fans, of course, identifying if they drive Plymouth, they're rooting for Plymouth. Here's a Dodge Charger. This is Dave Pearson from Spartansburg, South Carolina. He's running 3rd right now in his Dodge Charger. So all the Dodge drivers are rooting for him.
This is Freddie Lorenzen. He's in 4th position now. And, of course, Freddie's been driving a good race, not as fast as he'd like to be going, but been driving a good, consistent race and running in a very comfortable 4th position.
The race so far has been free of accidents. We've had no bad spins or collisions, and they're averaging better than 165 miles an hour. They used to run on the beach here, on the sand, wait for the tides to go out. And then in 1959, they built this beautiful speedway, and this is the 8th Daytona 500, called the fastest racetrack in the world. The France family, Bill France Sr., now his boy, Bill Jr., certainly been responsible for the boom of stock car racing in America.
Here is Richard Petty coming into the pits. He's got a very comfortable lead.
We'll be back with more action from the Daytona 500 right after this message.
This is the 1966 Dodge Charger that I rented to drive around Daytona Beach. And like all other 1966 model cars, it has such things as chrome moldings on the front and the top of the fenders, headlights, bumper guards, raised letters for the name on the hood, windshield wipers, and a mirror on the side. And of course, it's straight and level across and has a pretty nice finish. Over here is the 1966 Dodge Charger that Cotton Owens prepared for David Pearson to drive in the 500-mile race. It has no chrome molding over the fender. It has no chrome molding along the hood. It has no bumper guards, nor does it have a raised name on the hood. The windshield wipers are missing, and so is the side view mirror. It's not straight and level, but tilted sharply to the left to put the weight mostly on the left side of the car. And the finish, like a baby's cheek compared to the finish of the stock Dodge. And underneath, the tires are a different story. Racing tires, almost twice as wide as highway tires. Under the hoods of the cars, there's a vast difference. The Racing Charger, a full house, a 426 Hemi-head engine that's been reduced in size to 405 cubic inches. A large racing manifold supports a tremendous air cleaner, and there's hardly any room under the hood for anything else. Whereas in the rent-a-car, there's plenty of room under the hood, for that has a 383 cubic inch wedge engine with a 4-barrel carburetor. The difference between a racing stock car and a pleasure car. Now, back to you, Kurt Gowdy.
All right, Chris, here's another car in trouble. This is Paul Goldsmith's car.
Yes, I think perhaps the chunking of those tires has created a situation where probably he lost a drive shaft or a universal joint. That's the only reason I could see for him having the car jacked up. And here's a car that's blown the engine. I think that's Gordon Johncock. Yes, it is, car number 71. This is unfortunate. He was driving a great race. But of course, this causes a very dangerous situation because aside from the parts that he might have left on the racetrack to cut someone's tire, driving through that smoke screen could be very dangerous. You can't see a thing, and sometimes at the speed they're traveling, you would go maybe 200 or 300 yards, and that's really quite a distance.
There's the leader, Richard Petty. We're getting a real threat of rain here now. A few raindrops are starting to sprinkle. Richard Petty, who has quite a family story. And coming in here now is Marvin Panch, and he has a broken windshield. Another windshield has been broken with that flying rubber off these tires that are shredding rubber.
This is very unfortunate because Marvin's been driving a great race and was in a real good spot. They're putting gas in, but I don't think he's going to go back out.
That crew isn't hopping at all.
No, they're certainly not.
They know that he's done. Bad break for local boy Marvin Panch. Here comes Curtis Turner, and he's got a broken windshield.
Boy, I'll tell you, they're really having some problems up. That's two broken windshields just the last few minutes, and of course, both of these cars are on the same team, so this is a real tough break for the Wood brothers.
That's Hutcherson, Panch, and Turner now, all Fords with broken windshields.
That's right. Possible that there have been some others that we haven't caught.
The leader, number 43 in the Plymouth, Richard Petty.
That's Jim Hurtubise. He's trying to unlap himself. He's spent quite a bit of time in the pits, and of course he's trying to make that ground up. And Petty is just comfortable. He wants to ride along there and keep up his speed, but try to stray out of traffic if he can.
He likes to ride high in those bank turns.
Yes, I think the way his car is set up, he feels more comfortable in the higher groove.
Traffic here.
Yeah, and these cars, Hurtubise and Petty, are coming up on this traffic.
Petty has his father rooting for him. His dad won this event the first 500. That was back in 1959. Richard Petty won the Daytona 500 in 1964. So he'd be the first to ever win it twice if he could hold on to this lead. And his brother builds the engines. It's a great family story, this Petty family.
Yes, it is. The father has built a great racing team. There goes Petty, backed by Hurtubise again.
I see Chris Economaki in the pits now with Curtis Turner. And let's go right down to them.
Curtis, you're out of it. Why?
A tire come apart on Jim Hurtubise's car and hit my windshield. Broke the windshield, shattered it, and I went on a run about 10 laps before it come apart, and windshield come out of it.
What happened to Marvin Pants, your teammate?
Same thing happened. Hurtubise is spinning his left rear wheel, and he keeps going back out. He's already knocked 3 Fords out. Hutchison and Pants and mine.
Curtis Turner with a story on why he's out of the race. Okay, Kurt.
The leader, number 43, Petty. Right now, the average speed, the leader, 162 miles an hour. Amazing. We've had some yellow flags and bad weather.
Of course, with the number of stops they made, that is truly an amazing speed. And of course, here's Hurtubise going back by Petty again. He's trying desperately to unlap himself.
Although Petty has the lead, anything can still happen. A broken windshield, a spin.
Oh, there could be any number of things happen. There's a spin right there. In fact, it looks like a car lost its wheel. Who is that, Kurt?
That's Ned Setzer, and look at that wheel.
This creates a dangerous situation also. The cars could run over that wheel and, of course, put them out of the race.
Trouble in the backstretch.
Just goes to show that no matter what happens or how late the race, you could have trouble. Uh-oh, there's trouble on the front straightaway. That's Hurtubise, and he was momentarily out of control there. My gosh, you could have wiped out the whole field. I would say probably in his effort to make up this ground, he's driving a little too hard, and as slick as the track probably is, this situation can happen. He could get out of control easily.
The leader, Richard Petty, holds the record here for a full 500-mile race, 154 and 3,500 miles per hour. And there's Petty lapping Dave Pearson now. He's 2 laps up on him now. Now, what he has to do is stay out of trouble, right, Roger?
Yes, that would be the important thing now for Petty, just to stay out of trouble.
There's the 4th place car, Freddie Lorenzen.
Actually, I think Freddie's in 3rd place, unless he has to make another pit stop.
The weather, as you can see now, is bad. There's a yellow flag. They're driving now on a wet track, and they've slowed them down. Richard Petty is the leader. We may have a shortened race here. And now the white flag's up, 1 more lap. Petty is average. Look at the weight.
Actually, this is very dangerous here. This amount of water on a racetrack can be very dangerous. They're running probably 125 miles an hour without windshield wipers, so it's difficult to even see where they're going.
Petty's going to average over 160 miles an hour in this race, but in a short race, his record will not count. The first auto race, by the way, was run on Thanksgiving Day in America back in 1895. Average speed for the winner, 7.5 miles an hour. A great comeback for the Plymouths. They were barred last year with their Hemi heads, and here they are winning the first major race of 1966. Richard Petty, who started racing by washing and cleaning auto parts in his dad's garage. His father's won this event. Petty's about to win his 2nd Daytona 500. He's coming for the finish line. He'll win over $30,000 in prize money. And there's the checkered flag. Richard Petty wins the Daytona 500.
Certainly a great victory. And 2nd place, of course, is Cale Yarborough in a 1966 Ford. He drove a fine race. And 3rd place is car number 6, David Pearson, in a Dodge Charger.
The race was shortened 2 laps, 495 miles. Here's the winner now. Going into victory lane, Richard Petty, a very popular driver.
What made Richard Petty phenomenal was he started winning races and won championships in the early 60s.
You never saw this side of Richard Petty. Was the sheer determination that I'm the best driver out here and I've got the best equipment. Those 2 things right there made a big difference. The other thing was The response that Richard got from the fans, I think, pumped him up as much as anything that ever made him go to victory lane.
Richard was a 100% racer. That's exactly what made his success.